So it's really lovely to have you all in my Bijou kitchen. Apologies, it's not a big fancy kitchen. I'm in Port Stewart. There's a barbecue outside there that I did get some barbecue stuff done, but it started to rain here as it always does. So I'm just going to cook the meat on just a wee grill pans here, and I've got some veg and things that I did in the barbecue beforehand. And my parents just recently had a bit of a wild bay tree incident, so it got all cut down. So I've done all the vegetables over sort of dried bay leaves, which is absolutely smell quite weird around here this morning. I think the police were driving up and down a wee bit, but anyway, that's okay. That's fine. It's nothing new, probably. So I'm going to I'm going to do. I've got a couple of Peter's meats here, and I'm going to start them in the pan. So we've got this lamb strip loin, and we've got the bacana steak. So I'm going to cook them both now. The bacana steak or the strip loin, I'm going to season that with the Crack Foods porcini and black garlic salt, which is absolutely beautiful. So I go through quite a lot of this, and it's I find it brilliant for if you're cooking for vegetarian or vegan. But again, here it's lovely with the lamb. So I'm just going to put that onto the pan and just let that render down, and then just a bit of just salt on the bacana steak, and again just to put that down. And Peter, if you're there, we could.
Yes, darling, I'm here.
Good. We can have a chat. So I used your rump of lamb last week, and I used your Denver steak, which were both fantastic. And the salt aging, so that both these meats are from Glenarm Castle. So would you tell us a wee bit about that, Peter?
Yeah, the bacana is cut. One of the three. We don't cut any rumps out of slice. Whoops. I beg your pardon. I disappeared there for whatever reason. Yeah, we don't cut any rumps as in a slice of rump or that sort of thing. We seam out the three muscles in a rump, and the reason we do that is that the grain runs in different directions. So if you're cutting a slice of rump, two of them are going in an opposite direction to the way you would like to. So what we do is we take them all off individually. First, the picanha, which is the cap of the rump, and it tends to have the fat. And beneath that are two muscles that are running in a kind of a spear-like fashion, and they're the heart and the barrel. And we split those so as we can cut each piece of meat then the way that it's supposed to be against the grain, so as you're not putting things with the grain. And the picanha actually makes more money in South America. We were down in Brazil last year, and we couldn't believe the money that picanha steak made. It was selling for more than tenderloin. And that's because it's a very, very flavoursome piece of meat. And if it's cut properly, it's quite tender. The barrel and the heart are almost as tender as a fillet steak, as I say, but you have to seam them and cut them the way they are. We cut about 10,000 steaks a week, and they're still very, very good value over here. So you can, you can have a lovely piece of meat at a very affordable cost, and it's been very, very popular this last maybe 2 or 3 years into food service. The lamb strip loin is something normally not offered, but once again we do it for food service. Normally left for a lamb T-bone chop or a loin chop, as a lot of butchers offer it as, on one thing. And what we do is we take tenderloin out and then we debone it, and we've got, if you think of a strip of beef, it's a prime cut. Why would you not have the same in lamb? So all of our lamb now, especially this time of the year, we put into the salt chamber and we give it between 2 and 3 weeks. And what it does is it extracts moisture out of the fat. Most people don't enjoy lamb fat as much as they do others because it has very high moisture content, and it's quite, quite moist and that sort of thing and indigestible. But we find when we can extract about 18% moisture out of it, it almost turns like pork crackling. So you get a very, very different thing. And I hope you noticed that if you've tried your lamb strip loins that we sent out, the fat goes golden and sort of crisps up more so than does a higher moisture lamb that hasn't been. I see Paula turning it there. stick up for me at present, just
Yeah,
to say.
just to show you. So we have,
But
yeah,
it's yeah, the salt aging, we find if we can age them for between 2 and 3 weeks, it kind of makes it as good as it can be. And that salt of Paul's on there would be wonderful.
yeah, the salt is lovely, Peter, but I think I probably should have seasoned it afterwards, because yeah, it was kind of taken away from that lovely golden fat that we have. So it's you sort of, what I love about this is it's kind of hard when you know, that goes nice and crispy really quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. You know, we do it quite often on the barbecue or the egg or that sort of thing, and it makes a wonderful job of it, you know, because so much moisture has been displaced that it does crackle up. You know, it sort of bubbles and it's crispy. I see people eating lamb fat when they get it salt aged, people who normally wouldn't. They enjoy it. It's beautiful flavor, but you
Beautiful.
know, it's squidgy normally.
Yeah.
I was cooking it last week, this lamb. It was the rump of lamb actually I was cooking, and there was somebody filming it, and they had they'd been vegetarian for 10 years, and I'm not joking, it turned them. So I think if you can turn a vegetarian with lamb and not with bacon, I think that was
Yeah. No, you're good.
I think that was a real result for me, wasn't it? You know. I'm just going to take that meat off now, Peter, because I think with the bacana, I'm going to go quite rare in that.
Yeah, it actually works best if it's not cooked any more than medium. You know, it's just one of those cuts that is better. It's kind of like a hanger steak or that
yeah,
sort
so we've got like that nice sort of crust on that as well. So I'm going to set that aside. But
you're doing a beautiful job there.
Thank you, darling.
Paula and Peter, can I just ask you? I'm going to mute the microphone. Sorry, I forgot to mute. But if you can unmute yourself now when I mute them, and you can continue chatting there.
Me, I
just unmute yourself then, Paula. Paula, can you unmute the iPad there? Paula, can you unmute the iPad?
I'm doing it, yeah. Hopefully that's it.
Thank you very much. And Pete, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Very good. Perfect, thank you.
Don't ask me to do technical stuff, Mervyn, if you know what it's like.
You're okay, no problem.
It sets me into a tailspin.
No, you're fine. We can hear you perfectly there.
So we've got that nice sort of juice that, from the steak. So I want to just do a bit of a dressing in that. I've got just a bit of shallot here, and then we're going to make just like a quick brown butter dressing in the pan. Like I know you're all chefs here, but it's just sort of it was just to show you what really to show off these lovely products. So we've got this. I'm sure a lot of you are very aware of the Abernethys and their brown butter, and I'm sure Peter, you'll agree that with steak, the brown butter is. I know you're big fans of the. And I just want to really just cook that down a wee bit. We're going to talk to Susie out of Susie Balsamics later, but what I did was I did some pickled onions just to finish off the steak salad, and I've got a bit of her balsamic vinegar in there in the pickle, and I want to just add the pickle to the dressing as well. So just fire the shallots into that there. Just let them cook down a wee bit. With the lamb as well now, I'm going to just going to, it's still cooking away there. So it's I think the thing about that lamb too, Peter, is it's the smell is very appealing.
Yeah, it's got, you know, the whole thing that we try with the salt aging, or the whole kind of purpose behind it, was that while you're maturing it, it ages in a very different way. If you walk into a normal dry aging facility in Montier, quite often you'll smell it before you see it, and there's this kind of musty, blue cheesy smell. You know, probably the main driver behind us ever starting this escapade many years ago was, you know, we didn't ever feel that enhanced the thing. I mean, you've got a delicate flavor of lamb or beef or that sort of thing. And, you know, blue cheese is fine on a cheese board, but really you don't want it on a steak by choice. So, you know, all of that kind of musky smell and one thing isn't or shouldn't be there. And one thing or so, it works particularly. Lamb is a very, very delicate flavor and one thing and you know, quite often if it gets that kind of mustiness during the aging process, we don't feel that it brings anything to the party. And in the environment that we age it in, that it doesn't exist. When you walk into the dry aging facility, you just get a very clean, sweet smell, almost a kind of a nutty smell, but no fustiness. There's no mold growth or anything like that.
Very good.
I think that is.
Paula, while you're cooking the lamb off there, we're going to show a video very quickly of just what it looks like inside the sausage room, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Very good. And maybe Peter, you can talk about what we saw there. You can see the salt bricks very well in the background there.
Yeah, that's one of 4 dry aging salt age rooms that we have. There's 16.5 ton of Himalayan salt on that wall, and it's a 3-stage process that we evolved into. We were doing it all in one for a start, but as we introduced fresher meat on a weekly basis and one thing another, we were getting what we kind of describe as turbulence. And, you know, it was sort of taking things back a stage. So what we did was we built a second facility and we made it a 2-stage process. And now it's a 3-stage process. So the first part of it is that we introduce it, all meat of the same age, into one facility at the same time. And it spends a week in there and we can start the process fairly heftily. And then after a week, it moves on to stage 2. That was the stage 2 room that you were looking at. And we can hold about 6,500 loins and ribs in circulation at any one time. And they get split between the 3 places. And then, as I say, the final stage then is where we work off on a weekly basis. And we have, usually it's in there at around about 30 days and it's in there until we pull it, which, you know, we have some every week that's 80 to 100 days. There's actually ribs in there, some of our control ribs. I saw one the other day and it was slaughtered on the 1st of April 2015. So it's we have various different stages of it. But, you know, the normal where we reckon is the sweet spot is around about 45 days, 35 to 45 days. But we do some extra age for clients on a weekly basis, which is sort of 75 to 100 days.
Okay.
So, Peter, I have this rested, the Bacana's rested, and I've just, earlier on, I just did some radicchio on the barbecue. I'm just using this, another product from here. It's a rapeseed oil from just along the coast in Limavady there, and it's this is the hickory smoked one. So it comes from a single, you know, it's single farm, and it's first cold pressing always. So it's brighter gold. So, and we've got a wee bit of this Kearney blue cheese that everybody got, and I think this is one of the oldest cheeses in Northern Ireland. We don't really we wouldn't have a big history of cheese making in Northern Ireland, but Kearney blue, and Kearney's a town down just Kearney's a really an area at the side of down at the very bottom of the Ards Peninsula. And Paul that makes it, Paul McLean, he sort of wanted to mold or model the lines here like the dry stone walls. So it's I think he's done it, but it's a very consistent cheese. It's very I love it. It's pasteurized. No, we've got the young buck here, the raw milk cheese. this is a pasteurized one. I think it's very good. And we've got that blue cheese just on the dressing. Put a wee few wee pickled onions here, and I just finished the dressing for the smoked brown butter dressing. We've got a wee bit of some of the pickle liquor from the pickled onions as well, just to add a bit of acidity to that. So that's the first dish there. So that's the bacana steak. I know it's quite rare, but I'm the only one going to be eating this, so I think that's fair enough, isn't it?
That just makes you a good vet would have that thing back.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm sorry, I just got we've just got a few wee herbs out in the garden at the moment, so I want to use them. So that's that. I'm just going to let that lamb rest for a wee minute, and then I'm going to move on to your sugar pit bacon chop, Peter. Really, really popular. I mean, I see a lot on Instagram and London menus now. I know that Daffy Mulligans use it quite a lot. So it's beautiful. Tell us about. So this is a bacon chop here. I think these are fabulous. Now these are. If I was going to do this now at home, I would probably have that just with a nice duck egg on top after I've cooked it. But I'm going to do something a wee bit different. But tell us about these, Peter, the sugar pit.
Yeah, the sugar pit process is where we don't own an injector. We make a lot of bacon, but we don't pump anything. We don't. It's the old traditional hand rubbed method is what we use. So all of our bacon is dry cured, and what we wanted to do back a number of years ago is sort of balance out the salt with some sweetness, and we found that if we dry aged and extracted moisture out of our pork during the curing process, we could then it makes it almost sponge like, and if we reintroduce it to something, it will take that on. And my colleague and professor there, Mr. Paul Clark, blended a sugar blend for us to use. And what we do is once we have it dry cured, is we bury it in a blend of sugars for 10 days. And what it does is it reabsorbs some of the moisture that we've extracted during the curing process and takes them on board and introduces that level of sweetness. It'd be a strong contender for my last meal, and I mean in line with any steak. Absolutely, we've been runner-up for Supreme Champion in great taste with it. It's had 3 stars every time we've put in the various sugar pit ribs or sugar pit chops or sugar pit racks. Or one thing we've one gone in this year that's a sugar and mustard, a blend of mustards and sugars in one thing, and it's a particularly delicious thing. But I mean, I'm just of all the things we make, I'm very, very proud of this one. I really love it, as to say, and it sort of features in our house at least once a week. Yeah.
Before we move on to Paul, that you've made reference to your professor, wizard, as I like to call him.
Wizard.
Yes, I want to talk to you about the guanciale, Peter, because everybody got a pack of guanciale. I buy it like this, so it's just in a cheek. As you know, and I've done a couple of things with it. We'll do later with the guanciale. We're going to pair it with eel. But I've done this is just the rendered fat, which I think is pretty as good as the bacon itself, Peter. And then this is just a bit of the rendered fat that I've whipped up, and that's lovely. Just at the moment, just with some wild garlic, or onto sourdough, really nice. But the guanciale was sort of really, I think, one of the things that put Northern Ireland food in the map, because you won the Supreme Award. Was it back in 2012?
2012, yeah. It was only our second time entering Great Taste, and we weren't entirely sure that we had our guanciale. There's a dear friend, Zanti Clay, down there, who remembers all this only so terrible well. One thing out, because she came over to visit us just after that there. It's hard to believe that's 9 years ago, darling, but as I say, there we go, how time has flown. But yeah, it was when we entered it, we just weren't entirely happy with it. But by the time we got called to 3-star judging day, we were more happy with it, and one thing, and it won the Supreme Champion at the Great Taste Awards. And it's a lovely thing. You're taking something like a pork jowl and elevating it into something truly delicious. And it can be used anywhere that you'd use bacon, but like for carbonaras, and as Paul is using the rendered fat there, I mean, we do green vegetables and we do all sorts of things. My cardiologist heartily recommends it, as I say, on a weekly basis. So it's a lovely versatile product, and having a jowl of it in the fridge at all times is something that we rigidly adhere to. As I say, it's amazing what you'll take a couple of slices off or a couple of lardons off and use it for. It's a pretty addictive thing.
Very good.
Yeah, and I took it to Italy in 2014 to cook at the Terra Madre Festival. And looking back now, it was probably a foolhardy thing to do, to take guanciale to Italy. But do you know what? They absolutely loved it, and we bonded over it. So it was great. I brought eels and I brought guanciale. So it was they were impressed with both, and they were a wee bit. You can imagine at the beginning, whenever I said I brought guanciale to Italy, but they loved it. So when you get an endorsement from Italians, I think you're doing the right thing.
There's a question come through from Tim. Does the guanciale have to be cooked, or can you eat it as it is? It does. Cook
it really, really. I cook it very slowly. There's some of that, just nice in the pan, dry pan, very gently, so it crisps up. It's not a fast cooker. And then you get that lovely rendered fat that you can use for many things. So the leeks, or the lamb is cooked. I'm just going to warm up some leeks. And again, this is probably a good time to move on to Paul Clark. Thank you, Peter. We'll obviously come back to you. Darling. Yeah, we'll come back to you. Yeah, thank you.
And Paul, have you can unmute yourself?
Paul, we're moving on to a couple of your things here, but the first thing is the porcini and black garlic salt.
Very good.
Which is amazing. I love it. So tell us. I mean, I always say you're a flavor wizard, Paul, because you come up with things, and it's like, where does that man think of them? But you obviously have your chef background. But tell us about where these the idea has come from for this one in particular.
Yeah, sure, no problem, Paula. The salt in particular, it was we'd been producing black garlic for a bit, but a lot of people, as a few years ago, didn't really know, even a lot of chefs weren't still sure what black garlic was, how to use it, what it was about. So the thought process was, what's the simplest thing that we can come up with that's easy to use, that introduces people to black garlic as a retail product, that you'd have a first taste, wouldn't need education, wouldn't need 2 cookery books to figure out what to do with the product. It's salt, you pick it up, and away you go, you use it, So that was the thought process behind it.
Yeah, so I've used it on these leeks as well, and they just leeks are lovely at the moment, Paul, but it just elevates them, doesn't it?
It does lift things, as salt does, but the porcini in it, and say the sweetness of the black garlic and a bit of umami coming up. But yeah, it just sort of lifts things, without being dominant in itself. It can just add a little something.
What else would you suggest with that then? With the
personally, I love it on eggs. I love it on avocado. Anything mushroom based. It's hard to go wrong. Which was the original idea. If you have a salt, you really can't go too far wrong with it. The only thing you do need to watch, you say, is you don't usually you got to be careful if you put it on before really hard searing something, because the sugars are quite concentrated in it, because the black garlic is dried and reduced. So you just got to watch it doesn't over caramelize. But if you get it right and you get caramelization on it, we just use it as a finishing seasoning. Yeah.
Do you I take it you obviously produce the black garlic yourself, Paul?
We do. Yes, that's what started it. So we were making black garlic, but we're a business, so we need to find ways to sell it. So making it accessible and salt was the concept.
Yeah. So I've got the lamb there, and it's got the black garlic and the leeks of the black garlic, and then this just some smoked buttermilk. So it's just really just the buttermilk is smoked with a gun, and then boiled it down with some cream just to reduce by half, and then it's got xanthan, it's got xanthan, agar, and lecithin, and then just a wee bit of wild garlic oil. We still have wild garlic up here because we're still so much further north up here. A few wee rosemary flowers and that as well. So the smoked buttermilk, we're very lucky. I'm lucky sometimes that I get the wild or the buttermilk from the Abernethys, but not this time, unfortunately. So and Paul, these other new ingredients that you have, and we've got this sour cherry.
Yeah.
We've got and also the gooseberries. So again, absolutely fantastic, phenomenal. I've just tasted them. I try not to open the box because I would know I would have a go at them too much maybe, and I don't know where to get them. But they tell us about where that came about, because they're just the gooseberries, well, both of them, but the gooseberries are completely insane because they've taken on, a completely different flavor than ordinary gooseberries. Are they slightly dehydrated or?
Yeah, indeed. You hit the nail on the head. So, as you know, as a chef, and as many people in the room here will know, if you go to add vinegar or salt or sugar or anything to fruit, you're not actually pickling, you're macerating. And the fruit just breaks down and becomes soft. So the concept of these was that we wanted to create a pickle from berry fruits, but still have the texture. So we come up with a process whereby we could get the sort of equilibrium of the pickling liquor inside the fruit and on the outside. And that process, then you don't have the osmosis that causes the liquor inside the fruit to break down and the fruit just to collapse. So we're trying to sort of hold on to that integrity. So once you get past that, and once we had that bit done, the process became very simple, and the flavors are quite simple and straightforward. We're fortunate enough as well that we had a 3-star apple and elderflower vinegar that we make and also sell. So that was a natural. I love elderflower and gooseberry together, so it seemed like a natural match. Yeah. It wasn't too hard to find the vinegar combination to go with the gooseberry.
No, well, I've just finished off I've taken the bacon chop that's resting. I'm just going to put in some shallot, and that's some just homemade mustard, and I've got some these are just brined apples. I have an apple tree out there, and I always sort of think you give away all the apples, then you chill them. So what I did was just like a maple juniper mustard brine. And it changes them completely. And I'm going to add a wee bit of your couple of the gooseberries to this, but I wasn't going to do this, but I just think with the apples they'll work really nicely. And then just a wee bit of your vinegar that comes out of this with the elderflower in it, because I used the tempted cider to make the mustard, so it's just soaked it in the elderflower cider, and then we'll just take a wee bit of the cider into that there just to finish that off. And then I've got a couple of scallions as well there. So, but Paul, you seem to come up with all these things like constantly. Is this? Do you ever think, oh, that's it, I'm not going to invent anything else now? I've done it.
Yeah, it is a problem. It's the overcreative mind.
I mean, I saw you a couple of years ago, and I was sort of blown away then, and then this comes along, and you sort of think, right, where's that man? You sort of lie in bed at night, or?
Well, thankfully, I've been given, the partners I have at Crack Foods, and been given that bit of freedom to that was the idea of why Crack Foods was founded, because we're busy at On Place, given a bit of freedom to it was founded as an innovation business, to take things in a small way, an opportunity to just to innovate, So we always have something on the go. We're doing stuff with lacto fermentation at the minute. We've been working with koji and shio koji. We don't sit still, as no one does in this industry.
No, one of the things I did was with it. I have a wee bit of sweet Sicily out in the garden, and I just dehydrated some, just the flowers. And I think if you try the just a wee bit of the smoked, or with the guanciale, which is crispy, and then just one of your pickled cherries, and then just that wee tiny bit of sweet Sicily, just dehydrated. I'll try this here. So it kind of sweetens it, and you've got that nice saltiness. Yeah, I've had quite a few of those this morning, Paul. They're really nice. The sweet Sicily works really well with the cherries as well. So that's great. Thank you, Paul. I'm going to move on to Burren now to Susie. Is it Susie and Bob, or?
Bob, if you can just unmute yourself there, please. Thanks, Paul.
Unfortunately for you, Paula, it's just me.
Just you today. And then I'll bring Davy in, as Davy from Tempted in as well, if that's okay. Can I bring you both in?
Davy, if you're there, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Okay.
There we go. How you doing?
I'm fine, but I might have difficulty talking because I'm just salivating so much looking at all this food.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm always brining my own apples and making my own mustard. It's, never stops.
No, listen, it's not to be sneered at, Mervyn, because
I'm not sneering. I'm really jealous, actually.
It's a really good way of preserving your apples. I have big Kilner jars of it, so it's actually really nice. So, Bob, while you're talking, I'm going to fry off some these. I made some tortillas, but instead of using lard or butter, even I used some of Peter's guanciale fat that I chilled right down. I actually put it into the freezer, and then I made wee tortillas with that. So I'm going to just fry these off in some of the smoked oil, just to go with the eel. But we're going to pair the eel up with some of the of your wee pearls. So tell us about these. We've got a couple here. We've got the citrus ones, and we've got the blackberry and apple, which are the blackberry, and thyme, which I'm going to use with the eel. I think you'll approve of that one, yeah. So tell us, Bob, how this came about.
Well, I mean, we've been wanting to do them for a while, Paula. You know the way it is. When you get obsessed with what's happening, how can you make the flavour more intense? And what that does is give you a very concentrated dose. They'll pop in your mouth. They're great with anything oily. They're going to give you a little bit of acidity to cut through the richness of eel. Blackberry and thyme really would have been special, probably with Peter's lamb. A little bit of fruitiness, a little bit of herb, but really good for the drinkers amongst us. The citrus, if you pop a little bit of the citrus pearls in the bottom before you make a mojito, the last thing you're going to get is the pearls coming into your mouth, and they're going to pop open, leave you real clean, fresh flavors. And they're just they're a nice, simple thing. They're a good garnish, but they're serious enough. They're not gimmicky, and they show off the vinegar in a totally different way and a different application.
Another one that you have is a smoked vinegar, the peach smoked vinegar. I know that didn't come in the pack, but I just wanted to make reference to that because it's so good. You know, it's one of my favorite products from last year.
What we're trying to do, Irish peat smoke. I mean, it's renowned. It's one of the flavors of Ireland. People love it. And what that does is it gives you in a different dose. I mean, we use it quite a lot if we do a little bit of brunch when we're making a hollandaise. Forget about the white wine vinegar. Make it with peat smoked. You're going to have a lovely, real rich flavors. Great at a deglazer. Great to finish. I mean, where the advantage of vinegar is when you cook, the flavor profile doesn't change with the application of heat. You do that with a wine or an alcohol. You have to cook and cook to get back because it becomes so astringent. That doesn't happen with vinegar. You can add it at any time. The flavor profile will stay stable. And what it allows, the infusion of vinegar allows us to capture really seasonal ingredients or something very different. We've got a project on now where we've got some spent Bushmills whiskey casks, and we've had both black balsamic and white balsamic in them for a year. And the vinegar is stunning. It is Irish whiskey. All the flavors and nuances of a good Irish whiskey are going to happen in that barrel over the time. And we're very excited. We can't wait to get it finished
And
off.
is that in the white balsamic, Bob, or the?
We've done it with both, Paula, and initially, because it's a little bit more gentle, the white infused really quickly, quite gently. We thought very little was happening in the black balsamic, and all of a sudden, when you get the oxygen moving, it all starts to take place, and it's incredible what's happened in the last 2 or 3 months in the black barrel.
I can't wait to try that one. Davey, I've just used your template elderflower cider here.
Someone is with you soon.
Thank you. Just I made a glaze, just reduced it right down, just with a wee bit of honey, and that's just to glaze the ale. So that the elderflower, your elderflower is beautiful. You tell us a wee bit about that.
Well, I suppose it makes a change that you're not drinking it all to start with. But the elderflower cider is one of those. Everybody here talks very eloquently about how they do all their research and how they come across things. I was literally out in the shed at the back of the house where I used to make all the cider. I was just playing about one night, and literally a recipe for the elderflower cider came to me, and it's only about 2% different now than it was whenever I envisaged it. And basically I just tried to get something that was very light, very fresh, not overly sweet, but something that you could say was just a taste of summer.
Yeah, no, and it's beautiful. And what I've done just with the ale is just brushed the ale and then just torched it. And I've got a wee bit of these are just wee elderberry capers from last year. So they go quite nicely with the apple on the cider, and I think they work well with the vinegar as well, because you get a nice wee pop of fruit, zingy fruit from the vinegar, but then you get that nice wee bit of saltiness from the elderberry as well. So thank you both. That's great. Louis, are you there? Is Louis there? No?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Louis, you're coming through.
Yeah. Louis, I've got your sausage here, and I'm just going to put it onto the pan. But if you can tell us now, because everybody, a lot of people know you, you play rugby for Ulster, but actually what they don't know is that you make sausages and gin and all the wine and everything. You're very prolific. So tell us how the sausage came about, Louis.
So Paula, Skull van der Merwe, my business partner, and I, back then we both played for Ulster. And the one day at a barbecue at his house for, I think it was his son's 2nd birthday, he cooked some sausages. He went to his local butcher and made some, and he cooked up some for us. And he said, "Listen, taste this. What do you think?" And I thought it was the best boerewors. So that's the original sausage that you know about, and I thought it was the best boerewors I've ever had. And from there, we obviously not being from around here, we needed to build our network, and we started speaking to Invest NI, and at Ulster they helped us quite a bit just to build a bit of a network. And from there, we're fortunate enough to get into Henderson's and going to the Grow with Aldi program and winning that last year, and winning a year contract. And from there, we always wanted to branch out a few different products. And we know I'm pretty sure a lot of you know at least one South African at least. And there's quite a lot of us around. And one thing that's tough on being from home is you miss your culture, you miss your food. And that's the nice thing for us that we've realized is we make it a bit more home for a lot of the expats, and for us that's quite special. But we're trying to incorporate a little bit of a profile that suits the locals as well, and that's where the chakalaka comes from. That's basically one of the first culture collisions that happened in South Africa about I think in the 1800s when it was the gold rush. the British, after their stint in the mines, the British, the Portuguese, and the locals will get together and cook together, and they came up with, the British brought in the beans, the locals brought in onions and garlic and peppers, and the Portuguese brought chili, and they combined it all together and made a stew and mixed it with pap, which is porridge, like a maize meal. And that's where the chakalaka comes from. So that's almost the original culture collisions, and that's what we try to do. It's mix a bit of South African and African spice and taste profile with local produce. So that's where the chakalaka comes from. We try and explain it as a bit of a chorizo sausage. I don't know, you would probably know better than me how to explain it, but it's quite delicious. It's a little bit different.
More of those kind of what I would call sultry spices, with like nutmeg. There's nutmeg in it, isn't there? And there's and the sort of like coriander. And the cumin. So it's more. I think it's richer than a chorizo, which is just sort of. It's got the smoked paprika, but I think with the chakalaka, it's more. It's just more intense, Louis. It's a really, nearly. It's nearly like a curry almost without. Because it's got those kind of flavors in it. There's cumin in it as well, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of cumin in it
they
as
fry
well.
up beautifully as well, I have to say. They're fantastic for the barbecue, aren't they?
Yeah, they're fantastic in the barbecue. They go well with we sell them a lot of times as burgers. So we put them in a bun, a Belfast back, and with. Have you ever tried the Marmite cheese? Have you ever seen the Marmite cheese?
I have seen it. I haven't tried it, but
it's absolutely beautiful. It actually goes really well with that. So we'll combine that with a few different things, like with a pap. It's very traditional, but pap is like the maize meal, so that goes very well together.
Beautiful. I love Marmite, Louis. You have me sold when you said Marmite.
Not a lot of people enjoy Marmite, but I must say the cheese is just incredible. They've got quite a few different things going on, but it works really well with the chakalaka and actually the original boerewors as well.
Well, what I've done here is I've made it's just a syrup with a bit of brown sugar, and I've got maltose, and then we have a brewery up here, so I just use one of their new IPAs just to sort of sugary it, just to give it a glaze without having too much flavor. But everybody likes a beer with their sausage, don't they? So
absolutely.
I've got a question. Are they available in London?
Sorry,
I've got a question from Annie on the chat box. Are they available in London?
In London, unfortunately, not yet. They're available online though on our website. So it's only available at the moment in Aldi and in the Republic, and then in Scotland every now and then it's in a special buy. So we're going in the end of this week. I think we're delivering on Friday again. So it's not everywhere available just yet, but it is available on our website.
Okay, good stuff.
And Louis, I've just done that with just a grilled up some onions when the barbecue was outside, and when it was going earlier out of the rain, and just did a puree, but did them slowly in the barbecue again with lots and lots of the maltose and IPA glaze. And I think the two go really well together. That kind of beer, onions, and spicy sausage. All it needs is a glass of beer there, or a glass of Davies cider actually would be all right, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good.
That as usual, it looks like it's cooked perfectly.
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah, it is. And I think, Marvin, that's me. If anybody had any,
one very quick little video. I'll just show this very quickly. This is shakalaka. Oh, good stuff. It's drool inducing, isn't it? Yeah.
Thanks, Bevan.
Very good.
Thanks, Paula.
Thank you. I have to say the fat ratio on those sausages looks fantastic.
Good.
Thank
We
you.
have, where will they be available in Scotland? Did you say Aldi, Louis?
Yeah, Aldi Scotland. Only special buys at the moment. During the summer just to see how it goes. But yeah, hopefully permanently soon.
Okay. And a lot of the feedback in the chat box is we need more of these products in GB, which is great to hear, because I'm sure you'll agree with me. They are absolutely sensational. Paula, is that you? You're all done?
Yeah, that was so. We were going to take questions, weren't we? For
Yeah,
people
absolutely. If
about
anybody
10
has any
to
questions, please feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions for any of the producers or for Paula. And if, like me, I'm sure you'll wish you were standing beside Paula in the kitchen today. But any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself now. That was Paula. Those were absolutely amazing. We're getting a little closer. Can we get a little close up on some of the dishes as well?
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a question earlier that we didn't pick up, just asking Peter what breed of cattle you prefer.
Yes, it was Barney from Barney.
Yeah, Barney. We don't really have a preference. We have our we're stakeholders, 50% stakeholders in the Glenarm Shorthorn beef scheme, which is has been running in Northern Ireland for about 12 years and has recently just launched as in last September into an all-island scheme. People ask me, is Shorthorn the best? No, I couldn't say that in all honesty. It's right up there with the best. But you know,
your beef is the best beef I've ever tried, without a doubt. It is, as far as I'm concerned, the finest beef I've ever eaten. I just wanted to know what kind of, is it the aging? Is it the husbandry? Is it the breed? What makes your beef so much more superior than even some of the higher quality beefs that I've tried?
Well, look, the answer in that is that it's a combination of all those things. Not any one thing. Our aging process is pretty exclusive. There's lots of people throw a few salt bricks into their cold room and say they're salt aging. You know, it's a very, very scientific process. It's a very meticulous process. We've been at it for about 11 years now, and we don't know of anybody else anywhere in the world doing what we're doing. Everybody's welcome to do what they want to do, but that certainly in the final stages is a very, very important factor. But if you don't start, you know, our business is about the single most inconsistent raw material in the world. You will never eat the same animal twice. There are no two exactly the same. So the ambition was to introduce a level of consistency where we could make any piece of meat as good as it can be. Now, that will vary. We get pieces from time to time. We've yet to have one to disappoint us, but we get ones that blow our mind at times and say, like, how can we do that all the time? The bottom line is the piece next to it should still be very, very good, but it just mightn't be the same. And that's down to the whole process. Our Glenarm Shorthorn, the reason we do that is we've 120 odd farmers exclusively producing to exactly the standards that we want, from birth to plate. So in effect, that's about as much control as ever we can have. But beyond that, we salt age Angus, Hereford. It tends to be mainly native breeds. You know, Hereford, Angus, Shorthorn, things like that there. That's 90% of what earns a place inside in the salt chamber. And you know, that is because, you know, they tend to produce better eating meat. They have a higher degree of covering, they have a higher degree of marbling and one thing, and that's where your flavor is. And you cannot age a piece of lean beef, you know, if it doesn't have a covering on it and it hasn't been finished right. So we pay our farmers a premium to fatten our cattle more than any commercial operator would want. They would penalize them for submitting to them what we actually pay them a premium to give us. Our business is not about selling meat, it's about eating meat. Yeah. And you know, the whole focus is on the eating quality at the end of the day. And you know, it's if we didn't have our farmers doing as good as a job as they had our whole process would be futile. So it really is a combination of all those things. And the bottom line of it is, it's all about attention to detail. The small thing that somebody else thinks doesn't matter does make a great deal of difference. And we see that day and daily in what we're doing. And especially if you're trying to get consistency, if you don't do it exactly the same way every single time you're doing it, you're not going to end up with the same result. And that goes down to the minutest detail. And, some would probably consider that we spend too much time, faffing over the little things. Well, it's the little things that make the difference. And if you ask me, why is the beef different? I would say it has to be because of the little things that we care about.
Amazing. The last question, I won't keep you any longer. There's been a trend. It's not a trend that I really approve of, but for Wagyu beef, and then they're bringing out Wangus. Is that something that you've looked into, or do you think it's superfluous in the beef world?
Look, various different people will do various different things to put their own thumbprints on it. We do what we have chosen to do and enjoy doing, and we're very fortunate to be able to do that, and it's something that works very, very well with our clients, and we've built a very steady business on doing what we're doing. I mean, Wagyu in its own right is a very fine thing. Angus is a very fine thing. I cannot believe that if that job were done properly, that it wouldn't produce something absolutely superb. You're crossing two, the pure Wagyu is very, very difficult to do this side of the world, and is probably fatter than most people this side of the world would. It's a very niche product. You cross that with an Angus and you bring that quality and that sweetness into it. It's not something that we do, but we admire it, and it would have tremendous potential. Of course it would. You're crossing two really lovely things, but if you don't apply all the little small things, after that, that's only the starting point, is your breed stock. If you don't give it a very, very good husbandry, and then post slaughter treat it in the same way as what we do or somebody else might aspire to do, it will be futile, because you can take a wonderful piece of beef at slaughter, and if it's not handled perfectly for the next 30-40 days, you will lose the whole point of having produced that for 2.5 years or whatever it takes. So the detail that's involved post slaughter is equally as important in that 30 days as what the 2.5 years producing it to that point in the first place were. So people sort of generalize and say, oh, if you do this, that, there are no two aging facilities exactly the same way as there are no two animals exactly the same. And what you have to do is put a stroke across that will try and give you a level of consistency. So the worst you'll ever get is very, very good.
Yeah, so the whole USDA thing is completely, it goes against everything that you're talking about. So trying to uniform beef, and what you're talking about is terroir and beef being produced by different people, which is a wonderful thing to hear.
Yeah, look, I trained out in America, but that was a long number of years ago. And, at that stage, America was far in front of where we were this side of the world. But I think that's no longer the case. And I think there's some wonderful things been done in other parts besides America. And the trend in some places, there's commodity beef. We'll never get away from that. The likes of what's in Brazil and parts of the States and this, that, and the other, beef has been turned into a commodity. And thankfully, that won't ever happen this side of the world, because we can't compete with a commodity. So anybody goes down that route will find themselves out of business in a very, very short time. So what we've got to do is we've got to do something different. And the way we can do something different with the natural resources we have, but primarily grass-fed, having a wonderful nucleus herd and that sort of thing, is to take something good and make it into something wonderful, and stay away from the commodity end of things. That's just not where we can compete. So no, look, I hope I've answered the question.
Oh, you have. Thank you, sir. I think I've taken up all your time. Thank you.
Not at all.
Peter, I have another question. Where are you able to buy the sugar pit bacon chops at the moment? You sell online. How far do you deliver to?
Yeah, we deliver all over the UK, but just right now, all we're offering is a range of 7 bespoke hampers. Okay, it was something we had so many people asking for, a weekend hamper, this, that, that we introduced those just before Christmas. Not the best time in the world to be introducing anything into the food market, but we did, and we still do. But we're expanding and rolling that out in the very near future, whereas people will be able to buy as they wish, just go in and pick and mix and that sort of thing. To answer the question, we sell it here in Northern Ireland. It is part and parcel of a number of the hampers. Fortnum and Mason in London retail it, and if I'm not speaking out of turn, as I say, our partner in the South, James Whelan Butchers, are going to be selling it very, very shortly in lots of wonderful varied forms.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you. JP, did you want to come in? You've raised your hand there.
Yeah, just it's more just an observation and just a comment. Look, it's great to be part of this event, and my grandfather was from Armagh, so I always feel there's a bit of the north in me. But I just wanted to, congratulate all the producers. The products are outstanding, and they're really world class. And I think it serves as great inspiration for the rest of the country, what we can do with our raw materials and the processes that we can produce them. And Paula did a wonderful job as well. So keep going, and hopefully we'll be back using them in July down in the Republic.
Brilliant. Excellent.
That's very kind, JP, and much appreciated. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Good stuff. Luke, do you want to say a few words? Do you want to just unmute yourself there?
Yeah, I've got a sort of general question. I grew up in Portrush and Ballymoney and went to the same school as Paula, actually, but that was 30 years ago, which is why I sound like this now. But I would say that 25 years ago, when I was at school, 30 years ago, the food situation in Northern Ireland was dire. Really, really bad. You couldn't get any kind of artisanal products. So my question to you producers is why? What has changed in the last 20 years since I left, thanks very much, that has really made Northern Ireland produce sort of some of the best, not only in the UK, but in the world, as we've seen from the box that you sent out last week?
If I dig in, I would say, look, it was tourism. The end of the Troubles and tourism and people coming here and wanting food from the place. And I think that was the catalyst for it. And then just all the producers here today and many more that just embraced it all. And we have these world-class products now. And also, I think great taste, the Great Taste Awards, and a lot of chefs in London using the products have really helped. I don't know whether the rest of you, Bob or Peter or Louis or even with the cider, because that was something that wasn't around before, and also Paul's doing a fantastic job with food innovation. So I think there's an awful lot of people behind the scenes, Luke, that are doing really innovative things.
Not least yourself.
Maybe not doing too much to it as well. Some of the meat, and we've got the best fish. It's nothing, you don't have to do anything to it. So I think that's a lot of it. Sorry, I interrupted somebody.
I think what I would say is, I think a few years, my own path into making cider making was basically a midlife crisis. So, but it's one of those things, you realize that there are such high levels of quality in Northern Ireland. The people are absolutely lovely. There's an awful lot of bad publicity about things, but in general, everybody here is very capable and likes to produce something that's the best quality that they can. I think the one thing that I take from everybody talking here today is all the producers are fussy. Everybody wants things done the way they want them done because they find something that works.
Yeah. I think pride comes into it too, that we're proud now,
I think back about, certainly something I witnessed back about 10 years ago, Northern Ireland went through a stage where there was a little bit of success between Great Taste and various other initiatives and that sort of thing. And all of a sudden there was a confidence. You could see it. George McCartney won the Supreme Champion of Great Taste in 2011. And all of a sudden people took great note and thought, I can do that. And the other thing that I think is unique here is there's a huge collaboration. We're a small enough house here that everybody kind of knows everybody else's business, Luke. And, if I want to put butter in my product, as I say, I'll speak to Alison Abernethy. And the man in the middle there, the professor, the wizard, as I say, he has helped more people than anybody else in Northern Ireland. There's not many products that are world class in Northern Ireland that he hasn't had an oar in the water with. And as I say, I have huge admiration for that. But the collaboration that works between people, there's nobody stealing out of anybody else's pocket. If we can help you, come on in, let's help you. And if we can do it together, we'll do it together. And if you look across the product range, the amount of things that are an accumulation of different people's products and they're put together. We have certain things gone into Great Taste this year, and I think there's 4 of them have other people's product combined with our product, and we're very proud to do it together. And I think that's probably a little bit unique.
Also, look, if I could just say that there are many incredible stories here, and for the last 15 years, we haven't been afraid to tell the stories, and I think that has also helped make a difference. And as Peter said, that a very collaborative network of people, government agencies, private sector companies working together to tell the incredible Northern Ireland food and drink story, because there's never been a more exciting time to be part of it.
Actually, Sean, I was going to comment on that from my perspective as a writer and someone who's been brought up to Northern Ireland to see the products, visit producers. I've always just really been overcome by the sense of community, and this, like, even more so among Northern Irish producers. And like you said, Peter, and you, Sean, it's that collaborative effort, and just, you go to one producer, but you're recommending 5 others down the road that you have to hit into on your way out, like maximizing your time in Northern Ireland when you're visiting. It's always been so amazing that I've found that sense of community. I think that's really comes across, the spirit that's up there to just promote your own and everybody who's connected in the food community up there. I think it's commendable. It's really amazing.
Yeah, there's been a real push by consumers as well. I was a multiple buyer for 30 odd years, and in the early days, Pete talked about commodities. That's what we bought and sold. But consumers demand better quality, better availability, and local provenance. That story, and I think that's really driven it as well. And that's why you see such high quality products now.
I think, Luke, you have a wee bit of globalization as well. Like, there's a lot of us people that left Northern Ireland and have come back again, and that's probably what's driven it. But there's also that, I think the one thing that you find with Northern Ireland people is they'll have a go at something. They'll go away somewhere and they'll taste something and go, geez, I think I could make that. And they'll go home and they'll do it. But, we're very lucky here to have some amazing land to grow amazing crops and amazing animals as well. And that sort of, you need a blueprint to start with. And I think we're very, very lucky to have that to start with, the basic form of the ingredient. Yeah. And then it comes from the likes of, Peter, Paul, and all the producers around the table, and the likes of yourself, Luke, as well. Like, you're from here and, sort of showing off Northern Ireland as well and talking about it and that. So it's a combination of a bit of everything.
Balsamic pearls in Ballymoney in 1990. And
we need to work on your Ballymoney accent, Luke, and getting it back.
Have some
I'll
balsamic
call you, darling.
pearls.
I'll call you.
I think that's another online tutorial, Paula.
I think so. I've tried it. We've tried it at Borough Market.
That's the longest I've heard you
It
not
comes
swear
back.
for.
It comes back. Comes back to you. Look, I've heard it. I remember, I can't even say it, what you said one time at Borough Market. When you were referring to people, remember? Enjoying the food. Hungry.
Very good. Well, listen, all the feedback in the chat box has been superb. Lots of thanks, and I want to thank Paula for all your efforts today. That's been superb, and great to see the quality of the products. You're right. We've had buyers across here over the years, and they'll have done a site visit and been amazed that these are not just faceless industrial estates. These all are done with local ingredients by local people, and that's just grown and grown and grown. So what you have now is just not just quality, but capacity and capability as well, where the products are consistently good, and I think that's what makes it so different. So in the absence of any further questions, I would like to thank you so much for spending your time with us today, and I hope you enjoy anything you haven't tried yet. But do please get some social posts on there and let us know what you think of them.